We have 6 questions then on energy use, diet, and nutrition. The first question is, how much fat should a balanced diet contain? Um, it's a tricky question because all these numbers are quite close to each other. 55 to 60% is a bit high. That would be more your carbohydrate intake. The correct answer is actually B, 25 to 30%. So that's how much of our diet should be made up of fats. A group of 5 friends recently counted their daily calorie intake over a period of 7 days. Their average daily intake over this period is shown in Table 2. Analyze the information and identify which of the friends is eating above the recommended calorie intake. So, in order to get the answer right for this one, we need to know the average calorie intake for a male and a female. And hopefully we remember that a male should be taking in an average of 2,500 calories per day, and a female should be 2,000. So if we go through each friend, friend 1 is bang on the recommended amount as a male. Friend 2 is below the recommended amount of 2,500. Friend 3 is a female, so she should be aiming for 2,000. She's below. Friend 4 is also below as a male. And so the answer is friend 5, who is female and should be aiming for 2,000 calories per day, but they've actually taken in 2,400, so they're above that daily calorie intake. Gender is a factor that affects the recommended calorie intake per day for an individual. Describe 2 other factors that can affect calorie intake. So gender affects calorie intake because males should be taking on a little bit more than females due to a larger body shape usually. The other answers we could have said, so this is a 4-mark question, so we need 2 answers, each for 2 marks. So we could have said age for 1 mark, and then we need to explain that. We could have said under the age of 25 you need more calories. You might have said that teenagers are growing and they need more calories, or you might have said that older people burn fewer calories, so they don't need as higher calorie intake. Height for 1 mark. And to explain that, you basically need to say that taller people need to have a larger frame, so are going to need to consume more calories, whereas smaller people have a smaller frame, or you could have said a smaller skeleton, so they don't need to take on as many calories. And the final answer we could have put is energy expenditure. So that's how much energy we use up. And you could have said the more exercise you do, the more calories you will need. And you might have given an example there of a marathon runner who needs a very large calorie intake compared to somebody who perhaps leads a sedentary lifestyle and doesn't do any exercise. Sports performers need to ensure they drink plenty of fluids to avoid becoming dehydrated. Define dehydration. Another quite subjective question, really, because there's lots of different ways we could define dehydration. Excessive loss of body water interrupting the function of the body. So if you put anything along that lines about excessive loss or losing a large amount of water, or being well under your fluid intake for the day, anything along those lines should be accepted as a definition of dehydration. Explain 2 negative effects dehydration may have on the performance of a sports performer. So 4 marks. So it's 2 points we need to make and then explain those points as well. So we could have said an increase in heart rate when we're dehydrated. And this means that the heart has to work harder to supply oxygen to the muscles, which basically means that we're going to start to fatigue and tire, and it can result in slower performance or not being able to perform for as long for a runner, perhaps. You could also say, if you said a regular heart rate, that is, and then a similar response in linking that to becoming fatigued and tired, that would be acceptable as well as an explanation of what happens when we're dehydrated. A reduction in blood flow to working muscles, and we could have linked that to viscous blood. So that's when the blood becomes thicker when we're dehydrated, which means the blood flow slows down and therefore less oxygen gets to our muscles and it's harder to remove waste products. And again, we start to become tired. An increase in body temperature, so that means we could overheat and become faint or pass out, unable to carry on. We could link that to making poor decisions in sports, and we could have given an example of a footballer, a netballer, a rugby player. Muscle fatigue as a result of dehydration, and this can cause cramps, and it could also lead to muscle injuries, which means we can't take part in sport, or we have to stop taking part in sport, or it could reduce the range of movement so that you can't carry on, perhaps. And finally, we could have said a loss of concentration, or your reaction time increases. And that means your decision making will be slower or inconsistent, and your skill level is going to decrease as well. And again, you might have given an example, such as a goalkeeper not reacting as quickly to a penalty or a free kick. And final question, which one of these is largely responsible for growth and repair of muscle tissue? And the answer is going to be C. So protein is responsible for the growth and repair of muscle tissue.